Hi everyone, I'm Ron Cantor and this is Your Israel Connection. Your Israel Connection is brought to you by Tikkun Global, a worldwide family of leaders, congregations, and ministries. Also by Messiah's Mandate, raising up leaders for the coming Israeli revival. Now, let's get to the news. But wait, it's Purim! Whoa, that was amazing. Anyways, it's Purim here in Israel. What is Purim? Well, it's a day that we get to dress up. It's actually not even a day, it's like a week. Kids started 2 days ago. It begins tonight, and then I'm sure they'll do something this weekend. But why do we celebrate Purim? It's an awesome holiday, and it goes all the way back to the book of Esther. It's celebrating the fact that God rescued the Jewish people from the Hitler-like Haman who wanted to destroy all the Jews of Babylon. You see, it starts with the king Ahasuerus. It took me a long time to be able to say Ahasuerus. Can you say that? Anyways, they also call him Xerxes. This king, he had a wife. Her name was Vashti. And Vashti, she was just sick and tired of it all. She was part of the Me Too movement. And she said when he called her to come and perform, to dance for them, she was like, no way. She went on Twitter and she said, I am no longer taking that from him. It's hashtag something. Anyways, so he is very upset about this and he fires her as queen. So again, that wouldn't go over very well today. And then he does something else that really would not go over very well today, is he has a beauty contest to decide who is going to be his next queen. And there's this girl, sweet little poor beautiful Esther, and her cousin, older cousin, more like an uncle, by the name of Mordecai. And Mordecai says, Esther, I want you to enter in this contest, but don't tell them you're Jewish. And, he's thinking maybe God is at work here. So long story short, she wins the contest. She becomes queen, and the king has no idea that she is a Jewish girl. He married a Jew and didn't know about it. And so what happened is that his prime minister, Haman, decides that he doesn't like Mordecai because Mordecai will not bow down to him. Everybody else is a bunch of losers and a bunch of wimps, and they're compromisers, and they bow down to the evil Haman. But Mordecai says no. He's like a Braveheart, and he will not bow down, and he's going to paint his face blue and stuff like that. And so he doesn't bow down, and Haman is so mad that he wants to kill him. And he comes up with a plan to kill all the Jews of Babylon, and he gets the king to sign off of it with his signet ring. Meanwhile, Mordecai gets word to Esther, and he says, Esther, you have got to go to the king. And she's like, what? Are you crazy? He's not called for me in 30 days. And anybody who goes to the king without permission, it's over. And so he writes back and he says, listen, honey, don't think that you of all the Jews are going to escape, because he's going to find out that you're Jewish and Haman's going to kill you too. So what you need to do is go to the king. Who knows? Of course, you all know this verse. Say it with me, that you've come into the kingdom, but for such a time as this. Maybe, Esther, God has put you in this special position for this. And so she gets her courage on. She gets all of her gang of friends, her posse, to fast for 3 days. And then she goes to the king knowing that he could kill her. And he doesn't. And he listens to her. And long story short, Haman dies and the Jews live and they have a big celebration. And that's why more than 2,500 years later, I am wearing this stupid hat in Tel Aviv. Happy Purim. As much as we love celebrating Purim here in Israel, it's actually a sad week, because on Sunday, Omar Abu Lila, a young man from the West Bank, probably without much hope in life, probably didn't have much prospects, going to school, having a career, and he learned that in the Palestinian community that if you kill Jews, your family gets paid for the rest of their lives. You get celebrated as a hero. You probably will get a street named after you. You're a hero, and you're a hero to your family because you got them paid for the rest of their lives, even though you're dead, and then you're lied to until that you get to go to paradise where there are 72 virgins waiting for you. That's not the truth. And sadly, this guy believed that. And on Sunday in Ariel, which is a city in the West Bank, at a bus stop, he stabbed a officer in the army, or rather a soldier in the army, young man, and then he took his gun and then he shot him. And then he went on a shooting spree, killing another man, a rabbi, a father of 12, initially critically injured, but by the next morning he was dead as well. Really horrible thing that happened. And then he escaped. The Israeli Defense Forces were looking for him for almost 2 days. They finally found out where he was hiding, in which house. They surrounded the house. He had an opportunity to surrender, but decided to embrace in a gun battle instead, and he was killed just last night. You know what's amazing about all this is, you know, when terrorism takes place and Muslims are killed, nobody in this country rejoices. Do you know that in the West Bank, after this man murdered 2 Israelis, they're handing out sweets on the streets? Now, I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about the people. I'm talking about the grandmas, the moms. They're baking and making sweets to hand out with the children to celebrate the fact that a terrorist has killed 2 Jews. Those things do not happen in Israel. It's a blood sport culture, and it's very sad. Let me just read you from our blog. But while Israelis mourn the lives of their loved ones, Palestinians celebrated their deaths by distributing sweets on Sunday morning following the attack, seen in a video tweeted by the Palestinian Information Center. Interestingly, they only tweeted this in Arabic. They have an English page, but they didn't actually send out the video of the Palestinians celebrating the murdering of 2 Israelis. The caption read, "The distribution of sweets in Khan Younis in the southern Gaza Strip is a heroic rejoicing this morning." U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Jason Greenblatt, wrote on Twitter, "Disgustingly, but not surprisingly, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad welcomed this attack. And no doubt the Palestinian Authority will reward the terrorist and its pay for slay policy." So join with us in Israel as we mourn these 2 Israelis who've given their lives. Can I send you my book for free? It's called The Coming End Time Awakening. It's my gift to you when you join our newsletter at tikkun.tv. Just go to tikkun.tv, click on the book, and you can subscribe. And automatically, like magic, you're going to get my book in your email very quickly. Join us at tikkun.tv. Thanks. Now, many of you know in New Zealand there was a horrible, horrible terrorist attack this week where a white supremacist from Australia killed, I think it was 49 Muslims while they were worshiping. Now, as a Jewish person, as an Israeli, I want to say that I condemn, the fact that I would even think that I have to condemn it is ridiculous. Of course, it's horrible. And as a Jew, the last thing I'm excited about is white supremacism. It's stupid. It's silly. But what's really sad is that there's a video of poor, sweet Chelsea Clinton, and you probably won't find me defending the Clintons too much, but she went to a wake, a candle lighting ceremony in I think New York City for those who died, and some young students confronted her, and they basically told her that she caused the terrorist attack. Now, just wonder, what in the world would Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of Bill and Hillary Clinton, do? What could she have done to cause some lunatic in Australia to go on this killing spree of Muslims? She dared criticize Representative Ilhan Omar by saying that her tweets, her anti-Semitic tweets, were actually anti-Semitic. In other words, right now, if you call somebody out for being anti-Semitic, you will now be accused of contributing to white supremacism. That is absurd. So let me explain this. So on the one hand, if you are not willing to speak out against white supremacism, and we all should, it's stupid. If you're not willing to speak out against it, then you're complicit. But if you do speak out against radical Islam, then you're causing white supremacism. That's a hard word to say. why don't we equally condemn both? Why don't we just be honest and say radical Islam is demonic. It is horrible. White supremacy, if you're a white supremacist, you're demonic. It's horrible. There's no place for either one of those things. But don't pretend that simply condemning that which is wrong, which we've seen here in Israel this week with 2 Israelis dying, Islamic radicalism. We're not saying that every Muslim is a terrorist. God forbid. Nobody's saying that. We're saying that the radical Islamic ideology is bad, as well as white supremacism. And here's what you might not know, is that the people who are killing more Muslims than any other group in the world are not white supremacists. The reason we know about what happened in New Zealand is because it is rare. It rarely happens. Yet things that happen every single day, there is mass murder going on in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in certainly the ISIS-controlled territory, or once was ISIS-controlled territory. Muslims are being murdered by radical Islamists. Why isn't anyone speaking out against that? Yet they will condemn you if you speak out against a racist politician and say that you're actually causing white supremacism. Anybody knows me knows that Jewish Israeli Ron Cantor is not a fan of white supremacism, yet I will never back down from condemning radical Islam and anti-Semitism. Now here's a story that you might not have heard because no one's really reporting on it, but in Gaza there are protests. You say, Ron, come on, what do you, of course we've heard about, no, not protests against Israel. These are the poor people of Gaza who want jobs, who want a decent economy. Hamas has literally destroyed their economy. I've shared this with you before, but when my wife was 7 years old, her father used to take her into Gaza and they would shop for vegetables. And you know what? The people, the Arabs, the Muslims of Gaza loved the Israelis that would come there and spend money. And vice versa, everybody got along. That is until they were stirred up against Israel, and that has slowly and then rapidly after 2006, when Hamas was voted into power, their economy has been all but destroyed. And so some brave Muslims, Arabs in Gaza took to the streets and began to do the unthinkable. They began to protest Hamas. They began to protest the policies of Hamas and say how it's destroyed their ability to earn a wage for their family. And because Gaza is a bastion of free speech, the operatives of Hamas quickly arrested those people and they shut them down. And you know what else they did? They arrested the journalists that were covering it. So much for freedom of speech. It makes me so mad when people like Roger Waters, who doesn't want anyone to come here and celebrate Eurovision. He used to be the lead singer, one of the lead singers for Pink Floyd. Doesn't want anyone to come to Israel. Israel's bad. We're racist. You know what we have? We have freedom of speech. Do you understand? I am a Messianic Jew. What does that mean? It means that a good part of the majority of Israel does not agree, passionately does not agree with me. And yet I can boldly live my life, pass out literature, tell people about Yeshua without any fear of harm coming to me. And yet in Gaza, when these brave Arabs finally told the truth is what they finally did, they're beat up, some of the journalists were literally beaten. And the UN envoy, I won't even pretend to pronounce his name, he said, I strongly condemn the campaign of arrest and violence used by Hamas security forces against protesters, including women and children in Gaza over the past 3 days. I am particularly alarmed by the brutal beating of journalists and staff from the Independent Commission for Human Rights and the ratings of them. They're beating up people who work for the people who are against Israel. The Commission for Human Rights. And he goes on to say, glasses come back, the long-suffering people of Gaza were protesting the dire economic situation and demanded an improvement in the quality of life in the Gaza Strip. It is their right to protest without fear of reprisal. I'm not going to hold my breath. 17 reporters have been arrested for reporting on what's happening over there. So let's take a moment and pray for the people of Gaza. Wouldn't it be great if there was a popular uprising there and they actually had a real democracy, somebody that Israel can work with, and we could help restore their economy? That would be awesome. Hey friends, something really amazing happened to me about a year ago. I was in Nepal. I won't go into the whole story how I ended up there, but we were there working with a fellow that rescues young girls from horrible lives, incestuous, human trafficking, and they've got like 10 or 12 girls in their home, and they're just so happy to be rescued. And the fellow who leads this, I'm just going to tell you that his name is Bob. That's not his real name. It's a Nepali name that you or we cannot pronounce. So we're going to call him Bob. And not only does he rescue girls, but also he came, let me just tell you a story. He got a green card and then citizenship to the United States of America, where he married an American. Now, most people would have stayed in America, not gone back to repressive Nepal. But he and his wife, they moved back to Nepal to be missionaries. They began to start churches. They began to get persecuted, go to another city, another city. Next thing you know, they have 40 churches with 4,000 people represented, and that doesn't even include children. Amazing people. I was there in September ministering to their pastors. 60 of them came to Kathmandu, and we had an awesome 2-day conference. But Bob is getting older, and soon they're going to be moving after like 30 years back to the U.S. And his dream is to take his top 12 disciples to Israel. And I said, Bob, before I knew I had said it, but I said, Bob, if you can pay for the tickets, we, meaning you and me, we're going to pay for your time here in Israel. We need to raise $14,000 so we can bring all 14 of them. That's 12 plus Bob and his wife. We want to bless. These are people from villages. Do you understand? These are people who never dreamed that they would have the pastors who love God, who love Yeshua. And now in these 40 churches, they pray for Israel every single week. I want you to go to standwithmmi.org and choose the option for the Nepal's pastor's trip to Israel if you're willing to help us bring them here. I really encourage you to do so. It's a wonderful way to bless Bob and his disciples as Bob starts the retirement process and turns over this network to his team. So continuing on this theme, just showing you the differences between what happens here in free, democratic Israel. We're going to have free elections on April 9th. Please be praying about that. And what goes on in the West Bank and in Gaza under a repressive leadership. This week, our Supreme Court said that Michael Ben-Ari, who is the leader of the Utzma Yehudit, or Jewish Power Party, which many believe is a racist party, that they do not like Arabs and want to harm Arabs and have incited people to violence against Arabs. Our Supreme Court did what they've never, ever done before. Never. Every time there's election, the Attorney General says these people should not be allowed to run. It could be Arabs, it could be Jews. And then the Supreme Court says, nah, it's a free country, everybody can run. Our country, Attorney General recommended two different people should not be able to run. One was in the Arab Party, and the other was in this far-right racist party. And the Supreme Court voted 8-1 to say that Michael Ben-Ari cannot run because he is a racist and he's inciting people to violence. Meanwhile, they're allowing the fellow in the Arab Party to run. Now, that's Israel. I don't have a problem with that. I trust our Supreme Court. I believe that they looked at the evidence and they made the right decision. But that will never happen on the other side. In fact, if you're going to run for office in the West Bank, in Gaza, it's a prerequisite to hate Jews. Imagine if you ran on the platform of peace with Israel, loving the Jewish people. Not only would you not get elected, but you might actually make it to the election. And so, friends, that's what's happening in Israel. Thanks for joining us on Your Israel Connection. See you next week. Shalom.